The evening air was heavy with silence as a woman walked slowly down the narrow street. Her hands clutched the small hands of her two children, one on each side. Their steps were uneven, as if the weight of the day pressed too hard on their little feet. The mother carried no shopping bags, no purse heavy with money, only a folded piece of paper with a short list of things they needed most. The street smelled faintly of fresh bread from the nearby bakery, but for this family, the smell only reminded them of what they could not buy. The children looked at the windows of the stores they passed, their eyes wide with curiosity and a quiet kind of longing. Their shoes were worn, their clothes patched in several places, yet they held their mother's hands tightly as if that was enough to make them feel safe. When they reached the corner grocery store, the mother hesitated at the door. She knew she did not have enough money for everything, but she also knew her children needed at least some food for the night. She breathed deeply, straightened her shoulders, and gave a small, encouraging smile to her children. With that courage, she pushed the door open and led them inside. The store was warm and filled with bright lights that made the rows of shelves look almost magical. Fruits were stacked neatly in baskets, bread lined the racks, and the faint hum of a refrigerator filled the silence between footsteps. Other customers moved about casually, placing items into baskets without a second thought. But for this family, each step deeper into the store felt heavier, as if every price tag was a reminder of what they could not afford. The mother picked up a basket, though she already knew it would not be full. She walked slowly past the shelves, scanning the labels. Her fingers touched a loaf of bread, then a carton of milk, then a small pack of rice. She placed them carefully in the basket, as though each item carried great importance. The children followed closely, whispering to each other about the things they saw: cookies, fruit juice, and chocolate bars, things they wanted but did not dare ask for. One of the children, the younger one, reached out toward a box of cereal with colorful pictures on it. His mother noticed and gently shook her head. Her eyes softened, but her voice was firm. "Not today," she whispered. The boy dropped his hand quickly and nodded as if he already understood. He pressed closer to his mother's side, holding onto her dress. The mother moved to the corner of the store where the prices were slightly lower. She counted coins quietly in her hand, whispering numbers under her breath. Each sound of a coin clicking against another echoed loudly in her mind. She was already calculating what she could buy and what she must leave behind. Her heart sank as she realized that even the basics might be too much. A few customers glanced at her, some with indifference, others with mild curiosity, but none stopped. To them, she was just another shopper making choices. But to her, every choice felt like a painful test. Milk or bread, rice or vegetables, what could she give her children tonight? And what must she promise for tomorrow? The children, sensing her struggle, grew unusually quiet. They no longer asked for candy or toys. They just walked alongside her, their eyes darting between her handful of coins and the shelves that seemed far out of reach. It was the kind of silence that spoke louder than words. The silence of children who knew too much about hardship at a young age. At last, the mother placed only a few items into the basket: bread, rice, and a small carton of milk. She looked at the apples, bright and shiny in their pile. She thought of how her children had not tasted fruit in days. Her hand reached out, almost touching one, but she pulled back quickly. She could not risk spending the last of her coins on something sweet when they needed food to last. With the basket light in her hand and her heart heavier than before, she walked toward the counter. Her children followed, their heads low. The mother forced another small smile at them, though it trembled at the edges. She wanted to make them believe that everything was fine, even if deep inside she feared it was not. As they reached the counter, the sound of coins in her pocket felt like thunder. She knew what was coming. She knew she would have to explain, to choose to sacrifice once again. The bright lights above seemed too harsh now. The warmth of the store suddenly felt suffocating. The journey that had begun with quiet hope was about to become another moment of painful reality. The mother placed the light basket on the counter. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached into her pocket, pulling out the small handful of coins she had counted again and again while walking through the aisles. She spread them carefully on the counter, trying to hide the way her heart raced. The shopkeeper scanned the items one by one. The soft beep of the machine echoed in her ears. Each sound felt like another reminder of how much she owed. The bread, the rice, the milk, small things to some, but to her they were treasures. She waited anxiously for the total, praying it would not go beyond what she held in her hand. When the shopkeeper announced the price, her heart sank. She knew it before he said it. Yet hearing the number spoken out loud made her chest tighten. The coins in her hand were not enough, not even close. She swallowed hard and looked at the basket. Then at her children who stood beside her quietly. Their eyes wide, their faces pale with nervousness. She forced herself to smile, pretending it was nothing. "It's okay," she whispered softly. More to herself than to anyone else, she began to sort through the basket. Her fingers hesitated on the milk first. She knew the children needed it. But it was the most expensive of the 3 items. She placed it back on the counter, pushing it away gently. Her little girl noticed and tugged at her sleeve. "Mama, please," she said in a small voice. But the mother shook her head with a trembling smile. The shopkeeper raised an eyebrow. His tone was flat, impatient. "Is that all then?" he asked. She nodded quickly, even though her throat felt dry. She slid the rest of the coins across the counter, trying to avoid his gaze. She wanted to disappear in that moment, to become invisible, because every second standing there felt like the whole world was staring at her weakness. The other customers nearby began to notice. A man waiting in line behind them sighed loudly, tapping his foot as if their struggle was an inconvenience. A woman further back whispered to someone beside her. Their eyes flicked toward the mother and her children. The mother felt the heat rise in her cheeks. She lowered her head, pretending to fix the strap of her bag, but inside she wished the ground would open and swallow her whole. Her children clung to her hands, their small bodies pressed close as if they could shield her from the stares. The boy's eyes went to the milk again, still sitting on the counter, so close and yet now so far away. He did not cry. He did not beg. He just looked at it with a quiet longing that pierced the mother's heart more deeply than any words could. She tried to distract them, whispering, "We'll get it next time," though she knew she had no idea when that next time would be. Her words were a promise wrapped in hope but hollow underneath. She kept her voice steady, but her eyes glistened with unshed tears. She blinked quickly, refusing to let them fall in front of her children. The shopkeeper pushed the remaining items toward her with little care. The bread tilted. The rice nearly slipped off the counter. She caught it hurriedly, nodding in thanks, though he had shown none. She gathered the small bag in her hands, feeling its weight, or rather its lack of weight, as though it was mocking her. The bag was light, too light, compared to the heavy ache in her chest. Around her, life in the store moved on. People picked their groceries, scanned their cards, laughed at little jokes. To them, it was just another ordinary evening, but for her, it was another reminder of the thin line between dignity and desperation. She had done everything she could, yet it was never enough. As she turned to leave, her daughter glanced back at the milk on the counter. The mother saw it too and quickly pulled her hand, guiding her children toward the door. Each step felt heavier than the last. Her shoulders hunched under the invisible weight of judgment, the sound of whispers, and the harsh truth that she could not even provide the basics without sacrifice. The coins were gone, the bag was small, and the hearts of the children were heavy with unspoken wishes. The mother told herself to stay strong, to keep walking, to focus on the door ahead. But inside, the quiet desperation was louder than anything else. It screamed in her mind, reminding her of every failure, every promise she could not keep. Still, she held her head just high enough to protect her children from seeing the full depth of her pain. She gripped their hands tightly, her palms sweaty but steady. Together they walked out of the store into the cool night. The lights behind them flickered and buzzed, but for the family, the glow of the store only felt like a stage where their hardship had been displayed for all to see. And as the door closed behind them, the mother exhaled a long breath she had been holding inside. She whispered quietly, "It will be okay." Even though she did not know how, her words drifted into the air like fragile glass, easily broken. But for her children, it was all she had left to give. The bell above the store door jingled as the family reached the exit. The mother held the small bag close to her chest. Her children pressed tightly against her sides. She thought maybe they could leave quietly. Maybe no one would remember their struggle. But just as she pushed the door halfway open, the deep voice of the store owner stopped her. "Hey you!" he called out sharply. The tone was cold, hard, and filled with irritation. The mother froze for a moment. Her heart pounding in her chest, she turned slowly, her children's eyes wide with fear. The shopkeeper behind the counter looked down nervously, avoiding the scene, but the owner stepped forward, his heavy shoes striking the floor loudly. He pointed at the small bag in her hands. "If you can't afford to shop properly, don't waste my time," he barked. His words cut through the air like a knife. Customers nearby turned their heads, pretending not to listen but clearly hanging on to every word. The mother swallowed hard, her lips parting to speak but no sound came out. Her little girl clutched her arm, whispering, "Mama, let's go." The boy hid behind her dress, peeking out at the angry man. The owner's face twisted with annoyance. "People like you come in here acting like you belong. Counting pennies, holding up the line. It's pathetic," he sneered. The word stung, burning deeper than the lack of food ever could. The mother felt her cheeks flush red, not with shame alone, but with helpless anger. She wanted to defend herself, to explain that she was only trying to care for her children. But the lump in her throat grew too heavy. Her voice betrayed her and she stayed silent. The customers began whispering. Some looked away, uncomfortable, others nodded faintly, agreeing with the store owner as though poverty was a crime. The mother felt their stares like sharp needles against her skin. Her hands tightened around the bag until her knuckles turned white. She wished she could vanish, wished she could protect her children from hearing such cruelty. The owner stepped closer, lowering his voice but making sure it was still loud enough for others to hear. "Next time, don't bother coming in unless you can pay properly," he muttered harshly. "I run a business, not a charity." His eyes scanned the children briefly, but there was no kindness there, only irritation, as if they were nothing more than a burden in his store. The little boy's eyes filled with tears. He tugged at his mother's dress, whispering, "Mama, I'm sorry," as though the hardship was his fault. The mother bent down quickly, hugging him with one arm, whispering back, "No, it's not your fault." Her words were soft, almost broken, but she tried to smile at him, though her lips trembled. The store grew quieter for a moment. The sound of the refrigerator's hum filled the silence. The owner crossed his arms, waiting for her to leave. The weight of humiliation pressed down on her shoulders. Every step toward the door felt heavier, every second longer. She nodded quickly, not daring to speak, and began guiding her children out. But the owner wasn't finished. As she stepped onto the threshold, he called out one last time, "And don't think crying or looking pitiful will get you anything here. I've seen people like you before, always looking for pity, always expecting someone else to pay. Not in my store." His words echoed through the aisles. The mother's back stiffened. Her eyes burned, but she didn't turn around. She couldn't, because if she did, the tears she fought so hard to hide would spill. Instead, she gripped her children's hands tighter and stepped into the cool night air. Her chest rose and fell quickly, each breath sharp like broken glass. The customers inside shifted uncomfortably. Some avoided looking at each other, while others glanced toward the owner with a mixture of unease and silent agreement. None spoke up, none defended the family, and the door closed behind them with a hollow thud, leaving the store filled with the lingering weight of harsh words. Outside, the mother knelt down to her children. She brushed her daughter's hair back gently, wiped her son's tears, and whispered, "You did nothing wrong." Her voice cracked, but she forced strength into her tone. "We will be okay." The children nodded, trusting her even when she could barely trust herself. Back inside, the owner muttered under his breath, straightening the shelves with irritation. His pride swelled as though he had taught someone a lesson. But what he didn't realize was that the lesson wasn't his to give. His harshness had been witnessed, his cruelty noticed, and in the corner of the store, a pair of calm eyes had seen it all. The night outside was quiet, the street lamps casting long shadows across the pavement. The mother tried to keep her steps steady, tried to walk quickly with her children so they would not look back. But behind them, the echo of the store owner's cruel words still followed like ghosts. Her children clung to her hands, their little faces still flushed from fear and shame. At that same moment, the bell above the store door jingled again. A man stepped inside, tall but unassuming, dressed simply in jeans, a plain jacket, and a cap pulled low. At first, no one noticed him. He blended easily into the world. As though he was just another passerby, his presence was calm, almost gentle. Yet his eyes caught everything. This man was Keanu Reeves. Though most of the people in the store didn't realize it right away, he didn't carry himself like a celebrity. He didn't seek attention. He walked softly, his gaze steady, as though he had entered not just a store but a story already unfolding. He had seen the mother and her children leaving, their small bag of groceries pressed close to them, their shoulders heavy. He had heard the sharpness in the store owner's voice. the way the words had been spat out without mercy. And now as he stepped further inside, he noticed the uncomfortable silence that lingered, the customers pretending to mind their own business but clearly shaken by what they had witnessed. Keanu's eyes moved to the store owner, who stood behind the counter with his arms folded, his face still stiff with pride. The shopkeeper glanced nervously at him, sensing something different but saying nothing. The air felt heavy, as if the walls themselves held on to the cruelty that had just happened. Keanu didn't rush. He walked slowly through the aisles, his hands brushing against the shelves as though he was just another shopper. But his mind was focused. His heart ached at the memory of the children's wide, tearful eyes. He had grown up knowing hardship himself. He knew what it meant to be looked down upon, to be treated as though you didn't belong. That pain was familiar, and it stirred something deep inside him. As he reached the counter, the store owner looked up with a faint, forced smile. He didn't recognize him yet, or perhaps he didn't care to the owner. Keanu was just another customer, someone who might buy and leave. But Keanu's calm gaze didn't waver. It lingered on the man, steady and quiet, until the owner shifted uncomfortably. The silence between them was thick. Customers behind pretended to examine their baskets, but they sneaked glances, curious about the stranger whose presence seemed to change the air. The shopkeeper fumbled with some receipts, avoiding eye contact altogether. The owner cleared his throat, trying to act casual. "Can I help you with something?" he asked, his tone slightly softer but still edged with impatience. Keanu tilted his head, his voice low and even. "I saw what just happened." The words were simple, but they carried weight. The owner stiffened, his eyes narrowing. "What do you mean?" he asked, pretending not to understand. Keanu didn't blink. "The family you just spoke to, the way you treated them." A murmur rippled through the store. Customers glanced at each other. Some looked relieved that someone had finally spoken. Others leaned closer, eager to hear what would come next. The owner shifted his weight, suddenly aware of the eyes upon him. He forced a laugh. "Oh, just some woman who couldn't pay. Happens all the time," he said. Waving his hand dismissively, Keanu's gaze didn't soften. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't need to. His calm silence pressed harder than anger ever could. The owner's smile faltered. His eyes darted nervously, and for the first time, he really looked at the man standing before him. Recognition flickered in his face. Customers began whispering, "Isn't that Keanu Reeves?" One whispered to another. "It looks like him," another murmured. Their voices carried, growing louder. The owner's face turned pale. He realized too late who was standing in his store. His pride began to crumble. His arrogance shrank under the weight of the truth. For Keanu was not just a man. He was someone known around the world not for fame alone, but for kindness, for humility, for being human in a way so many others forgot. Keanu leaned slightly closer, his voice still quiet but firm. "Everyone deserves respect. No one deserves to be spoken to like that, especially not a mother trying to feed her children." His words were not shouted, yet they carried through the store like thunder. Every ear caught them, every heart felt them. The owner's lips parted, searching for excuses, but none came. The shopkeeper bowed his head, ashamed. The customers who had once looked away now stood taller, emboldened by the stranger who had stepped forward. The atmosphere shifted. The harshness that had filled the room began to fade, replaced by something new: hope. Keanu's eyes softened slightly as he glanced toward the door where the family had left. He could still see them in his mind, walking away into the night, caring too little, carrying too much weight. He knew he could not let the story end like that, and so he reached into his jacket pocket, ready to do more than speak, ready to act. The owner swallowed hard, his pride shaking. His regret was already beginning to show, though it was too late to erase what had been said. The customers waited, holding their breath, sensing that something extraordinary was about to happen. The quiet witness who had stepped forward was no longer just a stranger. He was the light shining into a dark corner, and everyone knew the story was about to change. The store had gone silent. The owner stood behind the counter, his arms crossed tightly across his chest, trying to appear confident, but his eyes betrayed him. They darted nervously from Keanu to the customers who now whispered his name under their breath. The shopkeeper looked down at the register, wishing he could disappear while the customers leaned closer, eager to see what would happen next. Keanu stood calmly, his shoulders relaxed, but there was strength in his presence. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't need to. His words carried their own power. "Why did you treat her like that?" he asked quietly. His tone was not angry, but it was firm, steady, and impossible to ignore. The owner blinked, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" he muttered, though the question was foolish. Everyone in the store knew exactly what Keanu meant. The man had humiliated the mother, spoken cruel words to her in front of her children, and now he was pretending it hadn't happened. Keanu tilted his head slightly, his eyes calm but piercing. "A mother came in here with 2 children. She didn't steal, she didn't lie. She tried her best with what little she had, and instead of showing kindness, you chose to embarrass her." His voice was soft, but each word landed heavy. The customers shifted, nodding faintly. Some of them looked ashamed that they hadn't spoken up themselves. The owner's face turned red. "It's not my job to feel sorry for people. I run a business, not a charity," he said defensively. His words were sharp, but his voice trembled slightly. Keanu didn't flinch. He simply leaned forward a little, his voice lowering. "Respect costs nothing," he said. The store grew even quieter. Every customer, every worker, every sound seemed to pause on that single sentence. "You don't need to give free food to treat someone with dignity," he added. His words cut through the pride of the owner like a knife. Not with anger, but with truth. The owner opened his mouth to argue again, but the weight of the stares around him silenced him. Customers looked at him with disapproval. The shopkeeper shifted uncomfortably, embarrassed by his employer's behavior. The owner looked at Keanu, his lips pressed tightly together, and for a moment he had nothing to say. Keanu stepped closer to the counter. He didn't tower over the man, he didn't threaten him, but his calm presence was more powerful than any anger could be. "Do you know what it feels like to be hungry?" he asked softly. The question was gentle, but it struck deep. "Do you know what it feels like to wonder if you can give your children their next meal?" The owner blinked, caught in the weight of the question. He shifted his eyes away, muttering under his breath, "That's not my problem." But his voice was weaker now, lacking the confidence it had before. Keanu's eyes did not leave him. "Maybe not," he said quietly. "But how you treat people, that will always be your problem." His words carried no anger, only a deep sincerity that made them harder to dismiss. The customers around nodded quietly. A woman near the fruit section whispered, "He's right." A man holding a basket lowered his eyes, ashamed he hadn't spoken up earlier. The air in the store had shifted. The tension was no longer about embarrassment, it was about truth, about conscience. The owner swallowed hard, his pride wrestling with regret. He muttered again, "She didn't belong here. She couldn't pay." But even as he said it, he knew the excuse was hollow. His voice cracked at the edges. Keanu's expression softened slightly. "She belongs here as much as anyone else. Everyone deserves respect, no matter what they have in their wallet," he said. His words were not only for the owner, but for everyone in the store, reminding them that humanity was measured by compassion, not by money. The silence stretched heavy and unbreakable. The customers looked at Keanu with quiet admiration. Some whispered his name again, finally realizing without doubt who he was. But Keanu didn't care about being recognized. He cared about the mother who had left humiliated, about the children who had walked out thinking they were less than others. He placed his hand gently on the counter, his voice lowering even more. "A moment of kindness could have cost you nothing," he said. "But instead you chose cruelty. That's not strength. That's weakness." His tone wasn't harsh, but the truth behind the words was impossible to ignore. The owner's shoulders slumped slightly. His arms loosened from their tight cross. His lips trembled as though he wanted to speak but no longer had the words. For the first time, he looked less like a man in control and more like someone caught in the weight of his own mistake. The customer's eyes stayed on Keanu, waiting for what he would do next. The store felt suspended, as if time itself had paused, and in that stillness, it became clear that this confrontation was not about winning an argument. It was about teaching a lesson that every single person in that room would carry with them long after they left. The store was silent, every customer stood frozen, their eyes fixed on Keanu. The owner shifted nervously behind the counter, his pride already shaken, his lips pressed together. But he didn't dare speak again. He knew the man in front of him was right, yet his stubbornness would not let him admit it. Keanu took a slow breath, his calm eyes glancing once more at the door where the mother and her children had just left. He could almost see them still, stepping into the night with nothing but a small bag that was far too light. His heart ached for them. He knew what it felt like to carry the weight of life's struggles, to feel invisible in a world that should have shown compassion. Without another word, Keanu reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his wallet. The shopkeeper looked up in surprise. The customers leaned closer, curious. The owner raised his eyebrows, confused. Keanu placed his wallet on the counter, flipped it open, and pulled out several bills. He set them down gently, but the sound of money on the counter seemed louder than anything in the room. "I'll take care of their groceries," Keanu said simply. His voice carried no pride, no show, only sincerity. Not just what she left behind, but more. Fill up bags with food for her and her children. Things they need. Things they can enjoy. His tone was steady, leaving no room for argument. The shopkeeper blinked, surprised. His hands trembled slightly as he nodded quickly. "Yes, sir," he whispered, reaching for bags. The customers exchanged glances, their eyes wide. Some smiled softly, others lowered their heads, ashamed they had done nothing when they had the chance. The owner opened his mouth as if to protest, but the weight of the moment silenced him. He realized that any word he spoke now would only expose his cruelty further. His regret was already beginning to grow heavier. The man he had dismissed as just another customer had not only spoken the truth, but was now acting with a kindness that he himself had failed to show. Keanu watched as the shopkeeper filled the bags. Milk, bread, rice, fruit, even small treats for the children. He didn't stop him. He didn't count the cost. For him, the value was not in the money spent, but in the dignity restored. He knew those children would smile tonight, that the mother would feel a little less alone, and that was worth more than any amount. When the bags were ready, Keanu picked them up himself. His hands were steady, his movements calm. He turned toward the door, every eye in the store followed him. Some people whispered his name again, realizing now without doubt that it was truly him. But Keanu didn't pause for applause. He didn't seek recognition. He simply walked toward the exit with quiet determination. As he pushed the door open, the cool night air brushed against his face. The street outside was dimly lit, and just a little ahead, he saw the mother walking slowly with her children. Their small figures looked tired, but the children still held her hands tightly. Keanu called out gently, "Excuse me." His voice carried warmth, not authority. The mother turned, startled. Her children clung closer to her, unsure. When she saw the bags in his hands, her eyes widened, her lips parted. But no words came out. Keanu walked closer, stopping a respectful distance away. "You forgot something," he said softly, offering the bags. The mother shook her head quickly. "No, I can't," she whispered. Her voice was weak, filled with both gratitude and hesitation. She thought he was offering charity, and her pride resisted. But Keanu smiled gently, his eyes kind. "This isn't charity," he said. "This is what you deserve, food for your children. Respect for your struggle. No one should ever leave a store feeling less than human." His words were quiet but filled with truth. The children looked at the bags, their eyes shining with wonder. The mother's hands trembled as she slowly reached out, taking the bags. Her eyes filled with tears she could no longer hold back. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. The children clutched the bags excitedly, peeking inside to see the fruit, the milk, the treats they had only dreamed of having that night. Their small faces lit up with joy. Keanu nodded, his smile gentle. "Take care of them," he said softly. The mother nodded quickly, wiping her eyes. Her heart felt lighter, her dignity restored. She had walked out of the store with shame, but now she stood with her children, holding more than just groceries. She held hope. Inside the store, through the glass windows, the customers watched. Some smiled. Some whispered quietly among themselves. They had witnessed something rare, something beautiful. The owner stood still, his face pale, his heart sinking as regret clawed at him. He realized too late that the kindness he had refused to show had cost him nothing. And yet now it had cost him everything. Keanu didn't look back. He didn't need the approval of the crowd. His act of generosity was not for applause. It was for the family who needed it most. It was a reminder that true strength lies in kindness, that compassion is the greatest gift one can give. He gave a small wave to the children, who waved back with wide smiles, and then he turned. Walking calmly into the night, the mother held the bags close, whispering prayers of thanks under her breath. Her children skipped lightly beside her, their laughter breaking through the sadness of the evening. And though the night air was still cool, their hearts were warm, warmed by the kindness of a stranger who had stepped in at the moment they needed it most. The door of the store swung shut behind Keanu, leaving the owner standing stiffly behind the counter. For a long moment, he didn't move. His face felt hot, his chest heavy, around him. The quiet whispers of customers filled the air like a low storm. Their eyes no longer looked at him with respect. Some glared, some shook their heads. Others avoided his gaze completely. The shopkeeper behind the register shifted uncomfortably. He didn't say anything, but his silence spoke louder than words. He had seen his boss humiliate a poor mother, and now he had seen a stranger. No, not just a stranger, but Keanu Reeves himself step in and do what was right. The difference between cruelty and kindness had been shown in front of everyone, and the contrast was too sharp to ignore. The owner's hands trembled slightly as he picked up the coins the woman had left behind. He stared at them for a moment, small pieces of metal lying on his palm. They looked so insignificant, yet they carried the weight of his mistake. He had thrown away an opportunity to be human. To be kind over this handful of coins, his pride whispered excuses in his ear, telling him he had done nothing wrong, that he had only been protecting his business. But another voice, quieter and heavier, told him the truth. He had been cruel. He had chosen harshness when kindness would have cost him nothing. And now, that truth echoed in the disappointed stares of his customers. One woman near the fruit section muttered under her breath, "Shameful." Another man, holding his basket, shook his head and whispered to his wife. All that over a mother and her kids. Their voices weren't loud, but the owner heard every word, each one stung. Each one cut into his pride like a blade. He looked through the window, and his eyes caught the sight of the mother, standing under the glow of a street lamp with her children. Keanu had just handed them the bags of groceries. The children were smiling, their small faces glowing with joy. The mother's eyes glistened with tears as she held the bags close. She looked lighter, stronger, as though the weight of shame had been lifted from her shoulders. The owner's stomach twisted. That joy could have been his to give. That gratitude could have been his to earn. Instead, he had chosen bitterness. And now the moment belonged to someone else. He pressed his lips together tightly, realizing the chance he had wasted. The customers still inside the store began whispering more openly now. "Did you see that?" One asked. Keanu Reeves helped them. Another replied, "What a man so kind." A third added. Their words carried admiration, but not for the owner. He stood there, invisible in his own store, his authority broken, his reputation sinking lower with every word. The shopkeeper avoided his gaze, pretending to adjust items on the counter. But his silence carried judgment too. The owner knew that his workers would never forget this night. They had seen the kind of man he truly was, and no amount of excuses could change that. He clenched his fists, frustration bubbling inside him. But beneath the anger was something stronger. Regret. It pressed down on him like a heavy stone. He replayed the moment in his mind again and again. The mother's lowered head, the children's frightened eyes, his own harsh words. He wished he could take them back. Wished he had chosen compassion instead of cruelty. But it was too late. The mother was gone, the children were gone. Keanu Reeves had stepped in and shown the whole store what real humanity looked like. The owner's chance to do good had slipped away, leaving him with nothing but shame. He looked again at the window. Keanu was walking away into the night. Calm and unshaken, the family followed slowly behind, carrying their bags of food. The scene burned into the owner's memory, and for the first time in years, he felt small. Smaller than the very coins he had clung to. The customers began finishing their shopping, but their eyes lingered on him with judgment. No one smiled at him. No one offered a friendly word. The atmosphere that once made him feel like the master of his store now felt like a prison of his own making. He muttered under his breath, "I didn't mean," but the words died before they left his lips. Even if he had spoken them, no one would have believed them. His actions had spoken louder than any apology could. He leaned against the counter, rubbing his forehead, his pride crushed, his heart unsettled. That night after the last customer left, the owner sat alone in the dim light of his store. The shelves around him looked full, but he felt empty inside. The sound of the doorbell still echoed in his ears. The image of the family leaving with downcast eyes haunted him. And worse, the memory of Keanu's calm voice replayed again and again. Respect costs nothing. The owner lowered his head into his hands. For the first time in a long time, he questioned himself. He realized that wealth wasn't measured by coins or bills, but by how you treated others. And though he had a store full of goods, he had failed to give the one thing that mattered most: kindness. The night air was cool as the mother walked slowly down the street with her children. Her arms carried the heavy bags, but this time the weight felt different. It was not the weight of struggle, it was the weight of kindness. Her children walked on either side of her, holding on to the bags with excitement, peeking inside every few steps. Their eyes sparkled at the sight of apples, juice, bread, and even a small packet of cookies. The little boy hugged the bag against his chest as though it was a treasure. "Mama, look, we have milk," he whispered with joy. The little girl smiled shyly, reaching into the bag to touch an orange. "We can have fruit tonight," she said softly. Their voices were filled with wonder, simple words that carried the power of dreams coming true. The mother looked at them, her heart swelling with emotion. Tears blurred her vision, but she blinked them away. She didn't want her children to see her cry again. Not this time. These were not tears of shame. They were tears of gratitude. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen. She felt respected, not by everyone, but by someone whose kindness had turned her night around. Behind them, the glow of the store still shone. The mother thought of the owner's harsh words, how they had burned her heart. But she also thought of the stranger who had stepped in. His voice had been calm, his actions stronger than any words. She hadn't even realized at first who he was. But it didn't matter. Famous or not, what mattered was his humanity. His kindness had reminded her that good people still existed in the world. The children, too, would remember this night. Not just the fear of being scolded, but the joy of being helped. The boy looked up at his mother with wide eyes. "Mama, that man, he was nice." The girl nodded quickly. "He made the bad man stop." Their innocent voices carried truth. They had witnessed cruelty, but they had also witnessed compassion strong enough to erase it. Keanu, walking a few steps behind for a moment, gave them a small nod before turning down another street. His presence faded into the night as quietly as he had appeared. He didn't wait for thanks, he didn't ask for recognition. He simply left the gift of kindness behind and carried on. That was his way, to help and then disappear, leaving others to shine in the warmth of the moment. The family reached their small home, a modest place with walls that had seen better days. They set the bags on the table, and for once the table looked full. The children's laughter filled the room as they unpacked each item. The mother smiled through her tears, whispering a prayer of thanks for the stranger who had turned their despair into hope. The story of that night did not stay with the family alone. The customers who had been in the store carried it home with them. Some told their spouses, some told their friends, and word began to spread. They spoke of the store owner's cruelty. Yes, but more than that. They spoke of the man who had stepped in, the one who reminded everyone that kindness was free. In the neighborhood, people began to share the story. Each time it was told, the lesson grew stronger. It was not just about a celebrity helping a poor family. It was about what every person could do. It was about the simple truth that a kind word, a gentle action, or even just respect could change a life. The store owner, too, was not free from the memory. Long after the customers left and the lights dimmed, he sat behind the counter, haunted by the words he had spoken. He remembered the disappointed looks, the whispers of judgment, and most of all, the calm voice of Keanu saying, "Respect costs nothing." Those words echoed in his mind, night after night, reminding him of the man he had chosen not to be. In time, he tried to change. He spoke softer to customers. He offered a helping hand when he could. He knew he could not erase the past, but he could try to write a better future. And though people never forgot that night, they also noticed the shift in him. Perhaps regret had planted the seed of kindness in his heart after all. For the mother and her children, the night became a turning point. They carried the memory with them, not as a tale of shame, but as a story of hope. Whenever the children saw someone struggling, they would whisper to each other, "Remember the man who helped us?" And they would smile. It became a lesson they would carry into adulthood, a reminder that kindness should always be passed on. And so the story lived on, told again and again, in whispers, in conversations, in lessons to children. It reminded people that cruelty is loud, but kindness is louder, that money can buy groceries, but respect can restore dignity, and that sometimes a stranger's simple act of compassion can become a memory that lasts a lifetime. The mother, Each time she thought of that night, placed her hand gently on her children's heads. "We are not alone," she would say softly. "There are still good people in this world." And her children would nod, their smiles proof that the lesson had taken root. In the end, the store faded from memory, but the act of kindness did not. The harsh words of the owner were forgotten by most, but the gentle strength of Keanu Reeves remained. It was more than just a moment in a store. It was a reminder to everyone who heard it that one person's compassion can light up even the darkest night.